Welcome to the BurbNBougie News Recap. Today's news recap is all about labor relations and what is going on in the workforce today with the strikes. Please chime in and let me know which resonates most. We have been talking about employee discontent. We might as well talk about the Waffle House. This title is I Don't Think It's Too Much. Waffle House workers push for $25 an hour. Let's get into this one. Workers at several Waffle House locations in the southern U.S. are among the latest group of employees in America to hold walkouts around a slate of demands for improvements to wages and working conditions. A petition circulating by the Union of Southern Service Workers, a worker organization supported by the Service Employees International Union, includes a push for $25 hourly minimum wage at the huge restaurant chain that is often seen as an icon of working class Americana. Other demands include a call to end automatic meal deduction charges from worker paychecks and an increase for security and natural disaster plans, as the chain has a reputation of remaining open during extreme weather events to such an extent that there is a Waffle House Index, has been a long-cited storm severity metric. That index often generates considerable publicity during natural disasters, but what the chain has long touted as convenience for customers, keeping locations open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through storms and holidays, is being described by workers as showing a lack of respect for the labor they do and the conditions they do it at low wages. Waffle Houses has more than 2,100 locations in 25 states, with an estimate revenue of $1 billion annually. Because the company is privately held, financials are not publicly disclosed. The longtime chairman of the Waffle House and son of one of the chain's founders has a net worth estimated by Forbes to be $1.7 billion. Gerald Green, a cook at the Waffle House in Atlanta, Georgia, for about 7 years, has been involved with the USSW since 2022 and participated in a rally in late September 2023 at his restaurant chain, where the workers spoke up to put pressure on the chain to meet their demands. The thing that got me involved in organizing Waffle House is I've seen things change over time. When I joined Waffle House, things weren't great at the beginning, but they've gotten progressively worse. As time has moved on, it's become harder and harder to have a dignified life while working at Waffle House. He noted one of the issues affecting workers is they have meal deductions taken from their paycheck automatically to pay for meals when they might not even get to take a meal on their shift. He says, we want that taken away. We're not even guaranteed to eat food on the shift. He also cited issues with scheduling systems that are inconsistent and often incorrect, including former workers still getting scheduled, issues with general cleanliness, and a lack of general respect for workers. As a cook, Green makes around $17 an hour, but many Waffle House workers work sub-minimum wages as servers, relying on tips. Waffle House workers are the upper echelon of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. A lot of people are struggling. I don't think it's too much to ask for people to have a dignified life when they're working so hard to get people meals. Personally, I've had an injury to my foot 6 months ago. Realistically, I needed a month off to heal, but I don't have time to do that because I have bills to pay. This speaks to the fact that people can't afford to get sick. People can't afford to get injured and still pay their bills. That is an issue that we really have to confront in America, because how do you work if you're injured, but how do you put a roof over your head? It shouldn't be this hard to live. You have to live perfectly in order to pay your bills, and that is challenging. Cheryl, a Waffle House worker in Durham, North Carolina, criticized giving a t-shirt as part of Waffle House's $1 million club for cooks who serve $1 million worth of Waffle House food. Yeah, that is equivalent of giving the pizza party. It's just like, give people actual appreciation, pay them some more money. She says, we're peons in their $1 million world. They get richer, we get poor, sicker, broken down, and they're taking vacations. People can't even afford to take vacation these days because when they come back, they are worried about their houses falling apart, literally. John Schussler, a Waffle House worker in South Carolina, explained that due to the low wages, he struggles to afford groceries, clothes for his child, and are behind on mortgage payments. Pauletta Dillard, a Waffle House server in South Carolina, said $3 an hour pay plus tips has been roughly the same for the past 2 decades, while more work is put on the workers. When I was a server in college more than 20 years ago, I was making $2.13 plus tips. They are getting paid $3 an hour plus tips 20 years later. There's this needs to change. People need to be able to go to work full time and still have money to live. It should not be a struggle to live and eat and take care of your children and do basic things. You guys go ahead and jump in the comments and let me know what you think. I think that America is in flux right now, and all of this malcontent that is bubbling up on the surface is about to really show itself, and you're seeing it with all of these strikes. Join the conversation, like, comment, share. So I came across this article from Forbes. Forbes says, let's broaden our focus from go to college to get on a pathway. This definitely sounds like an interesting article that we should discuss. The term career pathways used to evoke very narrow and specific imagery, shop class, vocational education, and job training options for kids who weren't going to college. But there's a movement happening in education to transform and modernize what that term means. Pathways are no longer for the non-college bound. They are for everyone. Until recently, students' options for life after high school were typically viewed in very stark terms. Either you went to college or you moved into a job. It's not that simple anymore. Good jobs that pay well are no longer accessible to high school graduates. Employers in high growth, high wage fields generally require post-secondary credentials. That doesn't necessarily mean a 4-year degree. Depending on the field, it could mean shorter term certification, an associate degree, or a bachelor's degree. But very few well-paying jobs are available to those with just a high school education. This means that all students need to be on a pathway to and through college or post-secondary training program. Many of the strongest career technical education programs, CTE, formerly referred to as vocational education in high school, these days are reflective of this reality, pairing practical skills-based education with college prep level academics. Students in these programs are expected to continue their education or training after high school graduation because they will need these post-high school credentials to open the doors to viable careers. It's time to think about the purposeful blending of rigorous academics and career-connected learning for all students, not just those in CTE programs. One of the questions most frequently asked by high school students is, why do I need to learn this? Right now, the answer is often because you'll need it to get into college. If we were to take a page from the best CTE programs and build more applied learning experiences into more traditional high school courses, we could engage students in much more meaningful ways. If we could more explicitly help them build what education leaders are now referring to as durable skills, we could show them that how they will translate into the world of work. By taking a universal approach to career pathways and providing career-connected learning to all K through 12 students, we could also put young people in a more informed position when choosing their post-secondary options. Imagine how much more successful and fulfilled students would be if they had better exposure to careers and the education training pathways that open doors to those jobs, choosing among colleges, post-secondary training programs, and even college majors. Last week, I had the privilege of helping to organize a national summit focused on educational pathways where these very issues were being addressed. Leaders from 20 communities in more than a dozen different states gathered in Indianapolis to share learnings, challenges, and strategies in their collective efforts to build pathways to the jobs that matter most in their regions. The room was filled with a range of leaders from K through 12 schools, higher education workforce training programs, employers, governors' offices, and legislatures. They all recognize that their students and their communities will be better off if they can expand access to quality educational pathways that lead to good jobs. And they're pursuing some pretty innovative strategies to put more of these programs in place. That is a good thing. And we definitely need an overhaul of education to the point that it actually makes sense to lead into adulthood that could be successful. This is a long article. I'm going to leave with this last screenshot, and you guys can look up the rest of it if you want to. This person says, first and foremost, these leaders are focused on building and expanding pathways into career fields like healthcare, information technology, engineering, and advanced manufacturing that are growing and pay well. There was a great deal of discussion at the meeting about what it takes to get the supply-demand balance right. At both the high school and college levels, it takes intentional effort to align the courses and programs offered with the evolving job market. That means delving into labor market data to understand where the opportunities lie and which educational pathways and credentials are needed to succeed in those jobs. Absolutely. Let's make education make sense for these kids that will grow into adults that need to find these jobs in the real world. Education definitely needs an overhaul, but this is where they also need to create a coalition with parents and the teachers. But this is going to take a lot of work because we already know what teachers are being put through in this country. Anyways, you guys go ahead. Let me know what your thoughts on this. Like, comment, share. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this car maker strike. Big three car makers paid their CEOs $1 billion since 2010, and now they say they can't afford to pay striking workers what they're demanding. The United Auto Workers' historic standoff with Detroit's three car making giants is centered on an age old tension. The union says corporate greed is keeping workers from earning fair wages, while Ford, GM, and Stellantis say they can't afford union demands. Let's get into this one a little bit. While both arguments have some merit, one fact stands out. The 10 individuals who served as CEOs of the companies since 2010 have collected more than $10 billion of compensation. Meanwhile, wages of U.S. auto workers, unionized or not, have declined around 17% in that time frame. This reality underpins the strike now entering its fifth week that is playing out against the backdrop of growing income inequality and rising executive compensation. We went backwards in wages in the last 15 years. Hell, most of our members can't even afford to buy what we make. The $1 billion total that Detroit carmaker CEOs have taken home includes salaries, bonuses, the value of stock awards, fringe benefits, and special payouts linked to retirement or corporate transactions. A spokesperson for Stellantis noted that recent mergers resulted in large one-time pay packages for previous CEOs. The median worker at GM and Ford earned $80,000 and close to $75,000 in 2022, respectively. Stellantis, which is based in the Netherlands, paid its average employee about close to $68,000 last year. At both GM and Ford, that puts CEO to worker pay ratios higher than the average among the biggest publicly traded U.S. firms, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. Stellantis said that it has distributed more than $2 billion in profit sharing to employees under the current CEO, Carlos Tavares. I don't exactly know that monetary symbol right there. In filings, each of the companies said that most CEO awards are tied to performance targets. If results worsen, payouts shrink. GM CEO Mary Barra said as much in a recent interview, noting that 92% of her pay is based on performance of the company. Each of the current CEOs, however, gets an annual salary of at least $1.7 million, regardless of performance. While the annual amounts for good picket line material, they're not unique. Corporate boards across industries have for decades doled out bigger and bigger packages to CEOs, leading to a growing divergence between how corporations in the US and beyond have rewarded workers relative to their top bosses. And this is the reason why I keep talking about there is a malcontent that is bubbling up. People want to be able to live where the people at the top can afford to live, and they just want to sprinkle a little bit of food, a little bit of shelter, a little bit of money on the peons at the bottom, and that has got to change. Wages are one of the major sticking points in union negotiation. The UAW initially asked for 40% hikes and wants to emerge from the strikes with at least 30% wages. People familiar with the matter told Bloomberg. So far, Ford says its offer of 23% raise is as high as it can go, while GM and Stellantis have been reluctant to offer much more than roughly 20% raise increases. There's a good reason for the ask. Since 2003, the average hourly wage for U.S. auto workers has declined by 30%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Among the factors contributing to this trend is the rise of non-unionized car production in the U.S. and the UAW agreeing to 2007 lower wages for its big three plants. Lower wages for new hires at Detroit's three plants. So new hires get to come in at lower wages, and the union agreed to this. While Fain has described what has some members make poverty wages, those employed in vehicle manufacturing still make more than average private sector workers, albeit a narrowing gap. UAW members also make more than non-unionized workers in the sector. And that is the reason why we need to continue to have these discussions, because everybody needs to be raised up, with the exception of CEOs who are making Scrooge McDuck money. These conversations will continue because I don't see employers simply just giving money just because it's the right thing to do, because people need to live and eat. So we will continue to have these discussions because I believe that these strikes in many different sectors will continue to happen. But you guys go ahead, join the discussion, and let me know what you think on this. Like, comment, share. Axios helps sum up what's going on with striking Americans right now. This one says more than 330,000 striking Americans help unions flex power. So let's just look at the numbers in total. So these are the numbers of people on strike from September 1st to August 11th, 2023. And this is a lot, considering this is just such a short time frame. But like I said, everything seems to be bubbling up. So we got Hollywood on strike, we got Kaiser Permanente on strike, we got the big three auto people on strike. Like I was saying in a previous video, the strikers Waffle House is going on strike. I know that there are things that are being missed because there are smaller strikes happening, but in total, 330,000 people are on strike. More than 330,000 American workers, from Hollywood actors to medical technicians, have participated in strikes since September, according to Cornell University's labor tracker. Why it matters. Labor unions enjoying their highest approval ratings in generations are deploying hardball tactics in far-reaching sectors of the economy. The UAW said last week that it could expand the strike against Detroit's big three automakers at any time, a shift in strategy for the union, which had been announcing new locations on Friday. UAW. Nearly 34,000 UAW members are participating in the strike against Detroit's big three automakers. The strike began on September 15th with 13,000 workers. Now it's expanded to 34,000. The Screen Actors Guild, which represents 160,000 members, has been on strike since July. Actors and major studios suspended contract talks on Friday. So we're going to keep having the entertainment industry being impacted. Two large-scale strikes, screenwriters and healthcare workers, ended this past month. The Writers Guild of America, more than 11,500 striking TV and film writers became eligible to work last month after 148 days on strike. Kaiser Permanente, about 75,000 people who work for the nation's largest nonprofit health system, went on strike for 3 days last week. It was the largest health worker strike in the U.S. The unions and companies said last week they reached a tentative labor agreement. By the numbers, the number of workers on strike has increased nearly tenfold since 2021. From January 1st to October 11th of 2021, there were 188 strikes involving 47,800 workers. In 2022, same time period, 345 strikes involving 183,000 in 26,800 workers. That is what, about twofold amount of strikes. All right, for this year, there have been 318 strikes. Now look at this number compared to last year. 468,200 workers. That's threefold. So this graph talks about workers involved in major U.S. strikes. It starts in the 80s, and you see that number is huge in the 80s. That was a time when American public was in flux. So we're not at that point where the strikes were that high, but there was a time in the early 2000s. You guys see the graph is pretty low, 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 and then COVID happened. I guess that's where that big spike happened, and maybe discontent went back up. But in 2023, things are bubbling back under the surface, and people are asking for more money because it is expensive to live. Okay, a flashback. Before the 80s, more than a million workers regularly went on strike annually. In 81, former President Reagan fired about 11,300 air traffic controllers nationwide for striking after he ordered 13,000 of them to return to work, drastically shifting the tone for labor movements. So he was like, no more of this. Between 2000 and 2017, the average number of workers that went on strike shrunk to about 100,000 per year. So things are drastically changing. The American public is in an upheaval, and we shall see where things go from here. You guys let me know what you think on this.